Next talk, again, is on development activities. Mike will talk about Java development for iRODS.
Geez, you get to hear me talk again. I'm sorry. Okay, so we'll.
Thank you.
Sure. Good job, Cesar. But I think it shows the kind of collaboration we used to see in it when it was DICE and the iRODS community is really still going on, and I think the consortium is doing a good job still nurturing that kind of collaboration. But I just want to say that within, speaking for DFC, we're really interested in both stealing what you guys are doing and collaborating and sharing the software, because we're NSF funded to build cyber infrastructure, and so the more it gets out there and is used, the happier we are. Okay, so I'm going to talk some about Jargon now, so Jargon is the Java API for iRODS. And we work really closely with the consortium people on the clients. I know there's lots of questions about what's going to happen with the Java and the PHP and the Python, and the answer is we continue to work together with the consortium, and it's all going to be good. There's lots of plans in place to help make all the different client libraries more sustainable, and I think Jason mentioned some of that using strategies like protobuf and 0MQ to standardize the protocols for all the clients. So anyway, so just know that you can develop with the Java API, the Python API, the C API. It's all good. PHP right now is a little sketchy. We're trying to get, basically it's a resource question, trying to get the resources so we can keep the PHP API going, but that's our intent. Okay, so I'll try to mix some prospective stuff with just some quick tutorials or views of how to use this stuff and what it is. Okay. Okay. So yeah, so really I just wanted to address at the beginning some, address some of the confusion about what's going on with the API, because hey, I'm DICE and DFC and the consortium is doing the core server. And the answer is we work really close together, and so this stuff is going to continue to go forward and be supported, and it's actually, I think, better supported now through the working with the consortium than it's ever been. So anyways, it can be pure confusing. So we have Python, which we haven't really talked about, but iPlant created a thin, pure Python client, which now Antoine has picked up and is also developing. And so Antoine is also in the loop with all the things we're talking about. So Python is going forward in the same vein. I'm doing Java and PHP. I'm 10% consortium now, so I have to be like less visible on iRODS chat. You can't hear me? I have to be sort of less visible on iRODS chat because what we're doing on NSF is development, and since we're not on SDCI anymore, I'm not doing as much frontline support. But again, we're working with the consortium on that. So client development is part of the 4.2+ strategy going forward, and Jason can talk more about this. The basic idea for all the clients is we want to migrate the functionality back to the server. If you've looked in the client, for Java and all these other clients, it's really chatty. So recursive operations and so forth right now are driven by the client, not by the server. And so what we're talking about is trying to create new protocols behind protobuf or Avro, depending on what's decided, that are much more coarse-grained, and where the client will only receive notifications. So the clients become less chatty and thinner, and we can spend less time in the weeds and more time doing the cool stuff on top, because I'd rather talk about that. We're talking about a phase migration across all the clients to this new protocol strategy. So we are data-intensive cyber environments, and so this is where all the NSF-funded DataNet software libraries are located. But I also want to show you that all the usual suspects are also in this place, like Jason. And so even though there are two places in GitHub, we're all involved together. Okay, so I just want to show you really quickly, how do you get Jargon and how do you build it? So I figure let's build Jargon. So what I'm going to do is copy this URL. Whoops. Can I do that? Shoot. here's what I can do. I will go to GitHub. So here's the DICE UNC GitHub, and you can see some of the different things we've got. First, I'll give you a little tour. So there's Jargon. Those are the core libraries. Ah. All right, this is awkward. Let's see if this will work. Better? Still shifted. Okay, here's what I'll do. Okay. Okay, so there's the Jargon libraries. We're also right now running, and we had some questions on this yesterday. Right now, it's just one guy. I'm sorry, but so I'm running our Maven repo right now in GitHub. Renzi used to run a Maven repo that had gotten quite sketchy, so I switched to GitHub just because I knew it would be reliable. And we are seeking either to at iBiblio, who is our companion institution here, or through Renzi, getting it on a proper Maven repo. But there just hasn't been time. We also have our WebDAV interface, so I'm going to be pushing a release out on that soon, so you can actually sit on top of Jargon and create WebDAV interfaces to iRODS. We're going to look at mobile development, so we have a student, Matt, who's going to talk later about mobile. The cloud browser is the code that Cesar and I were just showing, so if you want to start playing, it's right there. It's pretty easy to build and run. All the things like virtual collections and applications and metadata templates and so forth, what we're trying to do under this Jargon extensions library is create basically abstract interfaces for all of these things. And then we have a Jargon extensions library, which are reference implementation versions of things like metadata templates and virtual collections, built so that they sit in iRODS. So, for example, metadata templates are stored as iRODS files that are JSON files within iRODS itself and decorated with AVUs. But then you could take that interface and implement it with a Postgres database or a graph database or something. So we're trying to get this idea of a abstract interface and a reference implementation that is trying to use just what's in iRODS, so you don't have to bring in extra things. And eventually the things can be migrated into the server proper. Chunky is a new thing we're working on. So parallel transfer is really neat, but the problem is parallel transfer is really cool, but the network you're on might really be like crummy. So we want to augment the current parallel transfer with an approach where you can chunk files, so break a file into segments and transfer those segments via streaming. Again, you can do that in parallel, transfer all the segments and then call an iRODS rule to validate the segments and reassemble them on the server side, so that iRODS can actually keep state by nature of the chunks it has and makes it really, really easy to restart a transfer that has failed because your network kills a transfer after 10 minutes no matter what. Okay, so this is a problem we have, and this is a solution that's in development right now to help solve this for transfers over unreliable networks. And also we can use the same infrastructure for chunk transfer using the REST API and the web interface, like Amazon S3 can do. We also have a REST API. It's JAX-RS compliant. It's using JBoss REST Easy. 10 minutes, okay. This is probably more worthwhile here to see what we're doing. And it supports XML and JSON through content negotiation. I'm also contemplating, if there are linked data people here, having the REST API also be able to produce either RDF or JSON LD so that you can do like linked data views of the iRODS catalog using that API. Also under DFC, we've got Data 1 so that you can actually represent your iRODS grid as a Data 1 member node. Lisa Stilwell, who's in the room, did that. There's iDrop. So we have a lot of different libraries that are built on Jargon. Okay, so that's in GitHub. So what I'm going to do here for the next few minutes is I'm just going to show you how to download it and build it and run the tests, and we can do that in just a couple of minutes. Okay, so if I go to the Jargon GitHub, I can just pull in this URL. And I'm just going to open a terminal. And I will cd. Yes, I can. Oh. Yes, yes, yes. So I'm just going to say git clone. Given that GitHub URL, I'm sure y'all are well familiar with GitHub. So that's going to pull in all the packages. So Jargon is built with Maven, so it's a master POM and then submodules for different parts, with Jargon core being the primary library. So I'm going to cd to Jargon. So there you can see there's our POM XML and all the constituent libraries. So to build Jargon, you can just type, I'll make this bigger one little bit, maven install -d maven.test.skip equals true. Right now I'm building it without running the unit tests. And that will build the code and create the jar files. I'll pull it up, yes. There you go. So it's building. The way Maven works, if you're not familiar, is that it's a dependency management system, kind of like when you download an RPM. If there are other things, other Java libraries it needs, it will pull those libraries in and gather all the dependencies. And when you run this, it puts all those libraries in your local cache. So if you are pulling down a snapshot that hasn't been updated in Maven, you can just pull down Jargon, run this Maven install, and you'll have the latest code. So you can always do that. So anyways, that's how you build Jargon. It's rather easy. And I just wanted to mention about the tests. So right now, if you run the full suite, there's probably about 2,500 or 3,000 independent unit tests with Jargon. Back in the day, there really wasn't any iRODS testing, so all these unit tests actually test all the way through to iRODS. They're not mocked out. And so I'm so enthusiastic about the consortium because I don't have to test iRODS anymore because they're on it. So there have been huge improvements. I just can't say that enough. Okay, so the thing with testing is if you look in the Jargon library, you can do this at home. I'm going to go into Jargon core, and there is a folder called test scripts. Okay, so the way I do testing mostly is I start up VirtualBox and run a VM, an iRODS of some version, and then I run a script, which is this test setup consortium.shell, which will set up it will set up some resources, some user groups, some usernames, and those usernames are then used in the unit tests. So essentially, I go into my iRODS on my VirtualBox, I run the shell script, it will create user test 1, 2, 3, test resource 1, 2, 3, and so forth. Okay, you can set this up for your own server because what you do then is you go to your Maven settings XML, which you'll find in your .m2 directory on your local machine if you've already installed Maven. And if not, you can copy the sample settings.xml file. And I set up a profile like this, and this has all the things that correspond to the settings, the users I want to test with, the zone, the home, and everything like that. So I can set this up, and I can also turn on tests for federation, distributed resources, mounted collections, and so forth. So you can tweak the tests in here so that when I run Maven install, here, without the test skip, you'll run all the unit tests. And so the way it's set up for Jargon core, if I test Jargon core, there's probably by default, probably about 2,000 tests that will run with the standard because, you know, you can set up a federated zone and turn on federation testing and so forth too. So essentially, there's on the wiki in the GitHub are the steps I just went through. But really, again, the steps are start up a VM, run the shell script to set up some users, go to your settings XML and put corresponding settings in there, and then just run Maven install, and you will run all the Jargon unit tests. And I have to stop. But really, it's sort of quick and painless, and that's how you do it. And so there's probably questions, and you can also catch me if you're a dev outside. And we can sit and go through some of this too.
We do have 5 minutes for questions.
Good enough, okay. But if there's any Java devs, you can catch me outside too.
So I can see you're setting this up now. Do you have a copy of Jargon already set up that you could? show us the use of?
Absolutely. In fact, I have, and I will be sharing these slides. I can say just for a quick second about how it works. And here's in the slides are examples of how to set up your Maven POM to pull in iRODS. iRODS is really simple. It's different than the other client APIs in that the other client APIs are sort of embedded in a connection and actions on that connection. Jargon is different in that it actually is built around managing connections and hiding it from you. iRODS agents are stateful. The protocol is stateful and has side effects. So what Jargon does is it basically, I stole the Hibernate architecture and used it for iRODS. So that every connection is a thread local, so you can never have multiple threads banging on an agent. So essentially, to use it, you have a session that's based on Hibernate session that you get the connection from. Then from that session, you can get an access object factory, and that's how you get all your access objects, which are basically stolen Hibernate data access object terminology. So in code, I have an iRODS account, and then I can get an access object factory, and from that I can create all the service objects that I use to talk to iRODS. So just by getting, so here I'm getting a data transfer operations service, this DTO. So I say access object factory, get transfer operations iRODS account. Jargon will handle all the connection handling under the covers for you. So that once you get one of these service operations, they just have public methods that have POJOs in and out that will just do iRODS operations. So if you just look in the Jargon core pub directory, you can see all the access objects. Those are all the services based on resources, data objects, collections, transfers. So once you get your handle to this, then everything else is just a service you use with plain POJO methods. And that's really, in a nutshell, how you use Jargon. And the unit tests are a great source of examples of how to use all the API. And that's probably all I can do in 2 minutes, but yeah. I'll stop there.
Okay, let's thank our speaker.